Hello everybody, welcome to our site. Today we are in the southeast of France, in the département of les Alpes de Haute-Provence, between the village of Céreste and the village of Reillanne. And I would like to take you discovering a very special place, one of the most incredible rock priory, a rock monastery that I ever saw in Provence. Regarding history, the oldest document dates back to 1011. At this moment there is a small priory here, the Priory of Carluc, and it is in the sphere of influence of the big abbey of Montmajour near Arles, which abbot Archenric, it's his name, probably left his abbey and came here in Carluc in order to end his days, and he probably was buried right in front of me. At the end of the 11th century, Carluc became directly dependent of the Mother Abbey of Montmajour, and it became actually one of its most important assets, which makes that in the 13th century it is the apogee of Carluc, which became a monastery. And it was also controlling about 20 churches and priories in the surroundings. So a prosperous monastery, which was several times enlarged and modified. But as usual, in the 14th century, with the epidemics, with the 100 Years' War, came the beginning of the decay of the monastery of Carluc, actually like its Mother Abbey of Montmajour. There were also quarrels with the dependents, which makes that slowly this prosperous monastery became a mere priory until the French Revolution, when in 1790 it was sold as a national asset, biens nationaux, as we say in France. And then after, it was used as a quarry. It was literally vandalized until that few decades ago it was bought by the next village of Céreste and put under the protection of an association which name is Les Amis de Carluc. So several archaeological excavations campaigns helped to understand the general plan of the monastery, although it's still very difficult to define the use of every unit. Nevertheless, there are some very helpful explanation panels that help for the comprehension of the site. And in front of the plan, you understand that to the left, to the south, was the church. So let's start by the church. This church was dedicated to Saint Mary, and it's a Romanesque style building. Several times it was modified, it was reinforced, and for example this apse, which is now pentagonal, originally had a rounded shape. You will also notice that the decoration refers to antiquity, which is quite normal in this area. For example, look at this beautiful fluted column with a Corinthian capital. It is sculpted with two facing birds. Originally, the church was longer. One of the bays collapsed, but it is allowing to see that the church was literally built on the rock. There was a kind of trench that was dug out of the cliff, So there were also two accesses to the church, one which was right in front of me. It was giving on the original cemetery. In other hand, it allows people who were not belonging to the monastery to get inside the church. There was another access allowing, or an exit, allowing to get inside the monastic enclosure. We're going to see that and see the strange passageway which is there. So let's imagine that I get out of the second access to the church, and you discover in front of me this kind of passageway. Actually, it was divided in 10 narrow bays that were vaulted. The vaults were resting on small columns that have disappeared, and so it was a kind of tunnel. And to the right, you can see dug into the rock several graves, which makes that these passageways could be compared with a gallery in a cloister, but also compared with a funerary gallery. So you can better see where the graves are. You will notice that they have a cephalic cubicle, they have anthropomorphic shape. You see that most of the corridor was dug out of the rock. Nevertheless, you see also that there was a masoned wall, and probably behind were more conventional buildings that you find in a monastery, maybe a chapter house, a cellar, a refectory, and so on. And after this corridor, we find, I think, the most interesting, the most mysterious place in this priory. And it's a kind of hypogeum, because inside we discover several graves. It's always the same. You can see the anthropomorphic shape with the cubicle left for the head. And here you can see that there were two more accesses to the place. One here that could be closed by a door, another one here that could be also closed and locked, which make that this particular hypogeum could entirely be closed. The most interesting for me is this corridor, first because you can discover a beautiful potent cross that was engraved right here, but above all here you can discover a kind of small bench dug out of the rock where somebody could rest, sit, or put a knee, as I do, and by this hole you could see what was inside, and by this vertical slit you could pass the hand and maybe touch a body or something sacred, because perhaps this grave here is the one of our abbot Archenric, who became Saint Archenric. So people used to consider that if you touch a holy body, you kind of get some grace, divine grace. Let's get out of this cella memoria in order to reach another of those rooms. This one was also even maybe more carefully dug. You can't even see the marks left by the diggers, and one discovers a very beautiful vault. It was a square building. Above there was another masoned vault. There are still some stones. It was a kind of cloister arch vault. And some historians think that it was probably a second church, the church which was dedicated to Saint John the Baptist, a baptistery. Why? Because underneath is a small fountain, which is dry, of course, now, When others think, well, no, it's not a baptistery, it would be kind of monumental access to the cella memorial, which would be a kind of annex where more coffins could be stored, particularly in this area where one finds kind of well, where there were scaffolds, and on those scaffolds could be resting more coffins. That's another hypothesis. And this would be right in front of me. This other unit would be the oldest dwelling of the cliff. Some people see that the above rock shelter could be an hermit cell, when in front of it, where you see this little rounded shelf, there would be an altar, and this place would be a third church that would be dedicated to Saint Peter. So the problem is that the church of Saint Peter, this one dates back to the 12th century according to the diggings, and it is already mentioned in the 11th century. So today historians think that they found another ruin which would be the original church of Saint Peter, about half a mile from the monastery of Carluc, near a farm which name is the farm of Saint Peter. So in order to discover the big wall that was standing above the monastery, we have to follow the original way. You will notice that it was later used as another grave. There are plenty of graves. These people who were lying in these graves were taking advantage of the presence of the holy body of Archenric, buried right underneath. By the way, you see the above access to the well that I showed you before. And so let's find our friends. Goatee. They're so nice. So here are some remains of this large and solid wall. You see the width, about maybe 4 feet. It was quite high, at least twice this height, and it had, I think, two functions. The first function was to protect the buildings of the monastery, which were underneath, but another function, at least as important, was to show, with this huge solid wall, the prosperity and, in other words, the power of the monastery of Carluc. So it's time to leave. It's very hot today, and before leaving, the shepherd, he asked us to mention that there are plenty of rubbish everywhere left by the tourists. So usually he's the one who picks them and takes them with him, but he's a little fed up. So please, if you visit Carluc, don't forget to take your rubbish with you.